standard as well, not a very complicated standard. I think quite tuned to the kind of weather we have right now, a cloudy weather. So in any case, we've got a very interesting and a simple standard, I would say, Ind AS 24, which talks of related party disclosure. Well, as the name is suggested, it is a disclosure standard and there is no accounting treatment involved in this particular standard. So I think we will have a lot of diagrammatic presentations in this particular standard, because I think the focus is in terms of understanding that what kind of persons or what kind of entities, mind the word, I'm very carefully using the word, that what person and what entities are related to the reporting entity. But I think before I start with the standard, I think it is necessary to first of all give you a little background in terms of why are we talking in terms of Ind AS 24? Why do we talk in terms of making disclosure of related party? We'll talk of what kind of entities are related. But you see, we can appreciate, I would say, two things. Number one, there are many transactions which would take place in an entity only because a relationship is present. That means if the relationship was not present, perhaps these transactions which have taken place, that if the relationship is there, therefore the transaction took place, otherwise perhaps these transactions would not have occurred. Secondly, there are many transactions which would have occurred on a different terms and condition. Because of the relationship, the terms and conditions on the basis of which the agreements were done could have been different had there been no relationship. So the focus is in terms of two things. The focus is that why are we making a disclosure under Ind AS 24? For the reason, number one, that transactions perhaps would not have occurred. The reason number two, even if the transactions would have occurred, perhaps they would not have occurred at the same terms and conditions at which they were done. So this is the underlying principle on the basis of which the standard Ind AS 24 has been developed. Okay, so let me now tell you what is going to be our entire area of discussion on this standard. The focus number one is, of course, on the concept of what is a related party. There is a para number 9. You don't need to remember the para number, but just for reference, there is a para number 9 which talks about, the definition of a related party. So we will dig deep into the para number 9, where the definition of a related party is given. Second, there is a negative list also which is given in the standard and which tells you in para number 11 that these parties are not related party. So the main focus is on para 9 and para 11, and there is a small little clarification in para number 12 as well, which I can say gives you a little clarification on the definition. So I think if somebody would have asked me, which particular para should I concentrate in terms of Ind AS 24, I would say look at para number 9. It defines a related party. Look at para 11. It gives you an exclusions that these are not related party. And look at para number 12, which is a little clarification of the para number 9. Then the next focus area is that is there any kind of relaxations or any kind of exemptions which have been given, that in spite of the fact that there is a relationship, but we want to give them certain relaxations. And yes, government entities have been given certain relaxations, and these relaxations are given in terms of para number 25. As I said, you don't need to remember the para numbers. I'm just a little keen in terms of remembering para numbers. Therefore, I've given you the focus. So these particular areas are on Ind AS 24, and of course, then you need to decide that what kind of disclosures are to be given once the related party is being identified. So I think with this particular basic background, let's begin our discussion. Okay, so let me start the journey, friends, with you. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, Shriram. Good morning, Koshki. Good morning, Viraj. A buffering issue. Just see the internet at your end. I think everything is working quite good at our end. Okay. So let me, I think, first of all, start with the definition of related party with this introduction. Now, hear me very carefully, friends, as we discuss a few things with you. So I'm just taking you to the definition of related party, and I want you to very carefully hear what I'm about to say. So this is also which is given in the study material as well. the definition. But just hear me once very carefully, because there is one focus which we need to understand. And before I'll start digging deep into the para number 9, I'm going to first of all give you my three, not a three-step model, but my three important inputs in terms of Ind AS 24, which, trust me, is going to make your life very simple. So before I dig deep into the definition, I'm going to give you three important mantras on Ind AS 24, which is going to make life simple. Let me first go to the basic inputs of the definition. Now, if I look at the definition of related party, it says a related party is a person. Get the focus very clear. It is a person or an entity. The word is very clear that a related party is either a person, that means an individual, or it is supposed to be an entity that is related to the entity. That means I'm looking at the reporting entity. So it says a related party is either a person or it is an entity that is related to the entity that is preparing the financial statements. And as I said, it is called a reporting entity. Now, let me caution friends, since the standard does not involve accounting and involves a lot of interpretation, it is important that we should look at the language very, very carefully. Every word could count and every word could give you a very important interpretation. And don't worry on the notes. I'll give you some wonderful diagrammatic presentation of notes as well. You just need to very carefully listen to me and we'll document the notes as and when the need arises. So it says in clause number A, the focus is a person. The definition in clause A is focusing on a person. The para number 9 clause A is focusing on when a person is related to the reporting entity. That's it. It doesn't talk of entity. So when you're looking at identifying, is this person related to the reporting entity, you're going to focus on the clause A. Then it says in clause B, an entity is related. An entity is related. So when you're focusing on whether an entity is related to the reporting entity, you're going to focus on clause B. So the moment you face a question and you're looking at a situation that is this person related to the reporting entity, you got to see clause A. When you say is the entity related to the reporting entity, you got to focus on clause B. So be careful whether we're applying A or we're applying B. For a person, it is A, and for entity, it is clause B. Now, before we take it further, let me now give you certain inputs at this stage. I believe that before we start off with this Ind AS 24, let me give you some very important inputs which you need to continuously keep in mind as we progress with the standard. So you can start noting them down as well, and I'll start explaining the inputs as well. So I'm giving you some mantras. I call them as 3 mantras for Ind AS 24. So this is going to help us a lot in terms of the standard. So I call them as my 3 mantras on Ind AS 24. Number 1, I'm going to first of all give you a list of relationship, a basic list of relationship. So the first is I'm giving you a list of relationships. So I'm making a list of relationship based on this particular standard, and the list of relationship is number 1, control. The first kind of relationship is what we call control. Now, you are going to see the concept of control when you come to the consolidation standard. Now, caution, friends. I am giving you the concept of control for an ease of understanding, but you're going to understand the deeper concept of control when you come to Ind AS 110. The concept of control is been defined under Ind AS 110, but for the time being, we can say that if a company generally, I think I'm using the words very carefully, generally, I'm saying generally, if you've got more than 50%, I'm not saying 50, I'm saying if you've got more than 50% voting power in a company, you control that company becomes your subsidiary. So as an entity, if I control, that means I've got more than 50% voting power. So I've got more than 50% voting power in a company, then I become the parent company and the other company becomes my subsidiary. So you can say the control would lead to the other company becoming your subsidiary. That is one kind of, you can say, relationship. But let me caution you, it is not that 50% plus would lead to control. You're going to see later in Ind AS 110, there may be a control even with a 48% stake. Yes, you heard me correct. There may not be a control even with a 52% stake, because the assessment of control under Ind AS is no longer a rule-based concept. It is supposed to be a principle-based concept. But for the time being, to understand the application of this standard, you got to consider that if you've got more than 50% voting power in a company, then you are the parent and the other company is a subsidiary. The relationship gets established. That's one. Now, very important. I always call this relationship as that this is a strong relationship. This is nowhere given in the standard. This is nowhere given in the standard, but this is my interpretation of things. Let me caution you that if there is a relationship of control between the two parties, it creates a strong bonding. You know, every relationship may not be strong. There are certain relationships which are considered strong, and there are certain relationships which are considered weak. But let me caution you, what I'm telling you right now in terms of strong and weak relationship is not given in the standard. This is my interpretation, which is going to help you from the examination perspective, understanding the definition in para 9 carefully. Okay. The second kind of relationship is what we call joint control. The second type of relationship is what we call a joint control. Let's say, for example, two entities jointly control another entity. So let's say both of them have got a 50-50 stake. So no individual entity has got a control. No individual entity has got a control, but collectively, two entities have got the concept of control. Now, joint control is again an assessment which you're going to learn in Ind AS 111. So it is again not a rule-based assessment. It is not based on a percentage criteria. It is again based on a principle-based concept. But for the time being, let's consider that if two parties are there 50-50, let's say if three parties are there 1/3 each. So each one of them is, let's say, got an equal percentage and they jointly control another entity. So in this case, I can say it's generally, if there are two parties 50-50, if there are three parties, it could be 1/3 each. But it's not necessarily that the percentage is equal in nature. So in this particular case, you can say the entity over which you've got a joint control generally would become a joint venture. So the entity over which you're going to get a joint control is going to become a joint venture. Like you control a company, it's called a subsidiary. So when you've got a joint control over another entity, it is called a joint venture. I know some of you must be having some more knowledge, and you would say, so this also gives rise to a joint operation as well. I think I'm not talking of a joint operation right now. I'm looking at that if you've got a joint control, you create a joint venture. Number 3. The third kind of relationship is which arises because of significant influence. The third kind of relationship arises out of what we call a significant influence. The concept of significant influence is based on Ind AS 28. Like control is based on Ind AS 110. I think I'll just make a mention. The concept of control is given in Ind AS 110. The concept of joint control is given in Ind AS 111. And the concept of significant influence is given in terms of Ind AS 28. But generally, for the purposes of understanding this standard, if a company has got 20% or more, I'm including 20 as well. So if a company has got 20% or more, voting power in a particular company, we say that you've established a significant influence over the company. Here again, Indus 28 gives you a principle based assessment. There is a possibility that you've got more than 20% stake in the company, still there is no significant influence. There is a possibility that you've got 18% voting power in a company, but still you could establish a significant influence. But generally, if you establish 20% or more voting power in an entity, it's called a significant influence. And in this case, we say the other company becomes your associate. So I'm just making a list of the relationship. I'm not assuming any background on your part. We're going with the understanding that you might be absolutely blank on the standard. So I'm developing the concept from the very scratch to the advanced level. So these are the three relationships. Then there is another fourth relationship as well, and that is called KMP. It's called Key Management Personnel. It is called Key Management Personnel. So key management person would basically be a person who might be, let's say, in the business of what we say PDC. We call it as PDC. It's not a post-dated check. It is called planning, directing, and controlling. Generally, a person who might be a director in a company is called the key MP, the key management person. So we can say that the key management person in this case would be generally individuals. And who is responsible? Who is responsible for PDC? That means he is responsible for planning, he is responsible for directing, and he is also responsible for controlling in the entity. So any person who is engaged in the PDC, planning, directing, and controlling, is going to be a key MP, a related party. So I think you need to keep this in mind, that there are four kinds of relationship: a control leading to a subsidiary, a joint control leading to a joint venture, a significant influence leading to an associate, and a key MP. Control would generally arise when the percentage is 50 plus. Joint control would arise when there are two parties 50-50, or three parties 1/3 each, or four parties 25% each, but it may not be an equal percentage. And similarly, when you're looking at a significant influence, it is 20% or more. Now, let me also complete the chain of thought out here, and that is in terms of strong and weak relationship. Even the joint control, I always consider, is supposed to be a strong relationship. If the two entities are connected in terms of control, or they're connected in terms of joint control, it indicates a strong relationship. But if it is a significant influence, or if it is a key MP, I always consider it's a weak bond. The relationship is supposed to be weak in nature. So keep this one principle in mind. You need to be very clear that these are the kind of relationship, basically a four list of exhaustive relationships I've given you, and I've identified which of the relationship is strong in nature. The control and joint control is strong, and the significant influence and the KMP is a weak relationship. I guess I will be pretty much clear on this particular part. I don't think so. There might be questions coming at this stage. Okay, let's, I think, take this further with you. Now, this is one aspect. Now I am coming to the second aspect. So this is one background you need to keep in mind. You know, when I was looking at this particular standard, there were a couple of things which came to my mind that if you know them in advance, your life is going to be very simple. Now, the second aspect. The second aspect is we consider that relationships are always reciprocal. Relationships are always reciprocal. Now, let me explain what we mean by this concept, that reciprocal in nature. So we will always consider that relationships are always reciprocal in nature. Now, the question rises, what is reciprocal? You know, earlier standards before the revision took place even to Ind AS 24, that means I'm looking at IS 24, there was sometimes a confusion. And what used to happen, A limited in the financial statements used to say that B limited is related to me. But B limited in the financial statements never used to say that A limited is related to me. So Ind AS 24 made it very clear that this can never be the situation. If A says that B is related to me, B has to say that yes, A is related to me. You cannot land up saying, he is my brother. And the other person says, boss, I don't consider you to be my brother. So there is always a reciprocal relationship. So in a situation, for example, if you say that A Limited in its financial statements states that B is related to me. A Limited says in its financial statements that B Limited is related to me. It necessarily follows. We can say it necessarily follows a reciprocal relationship. So it necessarily follows that we are certainly going to say that B Limited in its financial statements, B Limited in its financial statement has to say, he has to say that A Limited is related. He has to say that A Limited is related. This is what we call the reciprocal relationship. So keep the basic principle in mind that if you say that A is saying B is related to me, B also has to say that yes, A is related to me. This is another principle that is called reciprocal relationship. Okay, now let's come to something very interesting, which is something which you might be hearing it for the first time. Then my third mantra which I follow in the standard is the concept of triangular. The concept of triangular relationships. So there is another concept which we will follow, and this is the most important concept in terms of Ind AS 24, and I call them as a triangular relationship. Now, in a situation, you see any kind of a triangle. Let's say, for example, there is Mr. X on the top, or there is, let's say, X Limited on the top. On the top of the triangle, it could be a person or it could be an entity. So on the top of the triangle, there could be a person or there could be an entity. And we see that there is a triangle, something like this. There is an entity, let's say B Limited, and there is an entity, let's say C Limited. I'm not taking as persons below. On the top of the triangle, there is either a person or there is either an entity. But on the low side of the triangle, on the base of the triangle, there are only entities. There are no persons. There are no persons. Now, what's this case? The question arises, for example, let's say Mr. X or X controls the entity B. And let's say, for example, Mr. X also controls the entity C. Now, one thing is very clear that Mr. X or X Limited is related to B. Mr. X or X Limited is related to C because there is a relationship of control. The main question arises, is B and C Limited related or not? The question is that is B and C related or not? Now, hear this mantra very carefully. So if you see, this is what I call the left-hand side, and this is what I call the right-hand side. If you see that there is a strong relationship on the left-hand side and a strong relationship on the right-hand side, mind the words carefully. If you see that there is a strong relationship on the left-hand side and a strong relationship on the right-hand side, I gave you the list of strong relationship, then B and C are related. So if you see on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side, it is a strong relationship. If you see that there is a strong relationship on both the left-hand side and the right-hand side, this would mean that B and C are definitely related. Another permutation combination could be that, let's say, for example, on the left-hand side, there is a strong relationship, but on the right-hand side, there is a weak relationship. So let's say there is a control on the left-hand side, and let's say there is a significant influence or maybe a KMP relationship on the right-hand side. Still, B and C are going to be related. So one side of the triangle should be strong and the other side should be weak. So it could be a strong, strong on both sides, or it could be a strong, weak, or maybe weak, strong, whatever. So even if you say the other way around, they are still related. So if you say it's weak on the left hand side and it is strong on the right hand side, B and C are going to be still related. But the only exception is if on the left and the right hand side, it is a weak relationship. So if you see that on the left hand side, there is a weak relationship, and on the right hand side, it's a weak relationship, B and C are not related in that case. So when you see, this is the principle on the basis of which the para number 9 definition has been built. So I'm giving you something in advance that if you're going to see the triangular kind of relationship, so just be careful on the left and the right hand side. If it is strong, strong, then the parties at the base of the triangle are related. If it is strong, weak, or weak, strong, the parties at the base of the triangle are related. But if on the left hand side and right hand side, it's a weak, weak relationship, then they are not related. So these are the three core principles. I call them as my three mantras on Ind AS 24. Let me just quickly consolidate before we come to the definition of Ind AS 24. But I hope I am pretty much clear on my three mantras on the standard I've given you. Okay, Viraj, you said, sir, how many entities maximum can form a joint venture? Well, there is no limit, but I'll not get into those details. You're going to see the concept of joint control when we come to Ind AS 111. Koshki, sir, in mantra number 3, why B and C need to be two person or two entity? Why can't it be one entity and one person? Okay, now this is something which I'll be able to elaborate more when I come to the definition in terms of para number 9. But I am now, right now, without logic, you can say, telling you that there has to be an entity. Okay, I'll give you a little logic at this stage. If you've got a person on the top, and if you've got an entity out here, or let's consider a combination that you've got an entity on the top and you've got an entity on the other way around. Now, there is one simple logic more, and this is not the fourth principle, but this is one thing. A person controls the entity, but the entity cannot control the person. There is a one-sided relationship when there is a person. A person can control the entity, but it cannot be the vice versa. So this is possible. But if you take the direction like this, it is not possible. An entity cannot control a person, but look at the other way around. An entity controls another entity, or the lower entity controls the other entity. Both are possible. And that is the reason, and that is the reason that you cannot have a person at the below triangular level. I think you got the logic. Because you would see two kind of relationship. One is called a one-sided relationship. I call this as a one-sided relationship when a person controls the entity, one side, but entity does not control the person. It's supposed to be only a one-sided relationship. But if you've got entities on both the side, the entity A controls entity B, or B controls A. It's a two-sided relationship. There is a slight little logic in terms of why you cannot have a person out here. So they cannot be related if they're not entity. So you will see the spirit in terms of para number 9 definition is built in such a way that on the top of the triangle can be a person, can be an entity, but on the base of the triangle, you're never going to see persons. You're going to see only entities at the base of the triangle, right? Okay. So let me see if any further questions coming in. Clear, wonderful indeed. Now let's take it further. Let me just consolidate the picture. I know I might have spent almost like half an hour today on creating a base on the standard, but trust me, whatever base I've given you is going to help you a lot in the exam, especially this element. Right, friends. I guess there was some electricity issue, I guess, due to which there has been a disturbance. I hope I am now visible, audible to you, I guess. Just send me a message if I can be clearly heard, friends. Is the audio video coming in good, I guess, now? Okay, there was a question. I think, Panu, you said in this case, Mr. X and X Limited has any relationship? I'm just going to consolidate the entire input, friends, no worry. So I've given you a total of 3 inputs. Let me just consolidate those 3 mantras on Ind AS 24. So as we study Ind AS 24, you need to consider 3 mantras at the back of the mind. One is the list of relationship. And as I gave you that some relationships are strong and some relationships are weak, but as I cautioned you that the list of the strong and weak relationship is my analysis, please don't make a mention of this in the exam. This is only for your understanding that there are 2 relationships. One is a case of a control and one is a case of a joint control, which we consider is to be a strong bonding. But if you got a relationship in terms of significant influence in KMP, then it is considered to be a weak relationship in this particular case. The concept of strong and weak, as I cautioned, is our own analysis. Please don't say in the exam that this is a strong and this is a weak relationship. This is for your conceptual understanding. But of course, the list of relationship is exhaustive. So we are saying there is either a control or a joint control. If it is a control, it leads to a subsidiary. If it is a joint control, it leads to a joint venture. If it is a significant influence, it leads to an associate relationship. And the fourth one is a person, could be a KNP. A KNP is a person who is engaged in the PDC planning, directing, controlling activities in an entity. The second input which I gave you in this particular case is that it's always a reciprocal relationship. That means if you're saying that E in its financial statement says that B is related to me, it necessarily follows that B also has to make a mention in the financial statements that E is related to me. And then finally, the most important aspect which I give you is a triangular relationship, in which I said that on the top of the triangle could be a person or could be an entity. And on the base of the triangle, you're going to see only entities, not a person. So you need to see on the left and the right hand side, if it is strong, then the parties at the base are related. If you see a strong or weak strong relationship, then also the parties are related. But if on the left and right hand side, both are a weak relationship, let's say a significant influence and let's say a KNP or maybe SI, then in this case, B and C are not related. Right. So this is the inputs. I hope I am pretty much clear so far. Okay, all good, wonderful indeed. Now let's take it further. Now we are going to look at the definition of a related party, that is para 9, and a little clarification which is given in para 12. Everything is given in the study material as well, but I'm just sharing the extract of the para number 9 to you. I also have the study material with me, where we are going to make some diagrams to you. So we're going to study each clause and try to visualize the kind of combinations and make some diagrams to you. So let me proceed with the para number 9. Now, just a little while back, I gave you one very important focus that you also now need to see in the question, that are you identifying a person is related to the reporting entity, or are you identifying that an entity is related to the reporting entity? What is a reporting entity? An entity which is reporting its financial statements. So if you focus that is a person related or not, you got to see the clause A. But if you say that I am looking in terms of an entity is related or not, you got to focus on clause B. Let's focus only on clause A at the moment. I think let me zoom this slightly further as well, so you can visibly see this much better. Yes, I think that makes it good sense. Let me just clear this out. So let me just clear this portion. Now let's focus on the clause number A at the moment. Now in terms of clause A, it says a person or a close member of that person. Now we need to understand what is the close member of that person's family. There is a definition which is given in the standard which illustrates that what is a close member of a person's family. We'll see that later, but he's focusing on two things: a person or a close member of that person's family is related to the reporting entity if that person. So when I say the person, the word person also includes the close member of that person's family. So when I'm saying that person means that person and including the close member of that person's family. Now look at this very carefully. Watch this carefully. If you want to understand the logic, hear the words very carefully. It says it has got a control or a joint control of the reporting entity. I'm sure you want to understand the logic as well. Do you want to understand the logic in terms of what the standard setters had in mind when they were drafting this particular definition? I'll give you. In clause number 1, it says it has got a control or a joint control. Out of the 4 relationship, which is a strong relationship, it is a control and a joint control. Cigarette influence and KMP is not a strong relationship. Therefore, in the clause number 1, they concentrated only on a strong relationship. You don't need to remember the definition. You just need to remember the logic. So it says that if the person has a control or joint control of the reporting entity, the focus one is that it's a one-sided relationship. The person has got a control. The person has got a joint control. It's not two-sided. The reporting entity doesn't control or has a joint control of the person. One. And the clause is concentrating on the strong relationship. Okay. Then it says that there is a significant influence over the reporting entity. Now you can see in the clause number 2, they're looking at a weak relationship. But in terms of the weak relationship, they never talked about the KMP relationship. There is a separate clause number 3 which is being devoted to KMP. Why did these standard setters not consider the both weak relationship as a part of the clause number 2? Just like they took the 2 strong relationship as a part of the clause number 1, they could have taken the 2 weak relationship as a part of the clause number 2, but they decided to keep it separate. There is reason. We'll see that. Then he says the person is a member of the key management personnel, KMP. It says of the reporting entity or the parent of the reporting entity. You can now see the logic. In the clause number 3, they inserted that you could be a KMP of the reporting entity, or you could also be a KMP of the parent entity of the reporting entity. In case of significant influence, you've got a significant influence over the reporting entity. There is no parent of the reporting entity in the clause number 2. So can you see, if you just try to visualize, the standard setters had a very simple thought process in mind. When they created the definition in para number 9, they kept a person as a part of the clause A, and they kept the entity as a part of the clause number B. That was one focus point. In terms of the person, when they drafted the clauses, they had a strong relationship on one mind and a weak relationship on the other. Now, they defined the clause number 1 where they considered only the strong relationship of control and a joint control. When they were drafting the clause number 2, they could have taken both the weak relationships into account, but then they segregated the weak relationship of significant influence in clause 2 and a weak relationship of KMP in clause 3. Reason that in terms of KMP, you can be a KMP of the reporting entity, or you can be a KMP of the parent of the reporting entity. But when there is a control, or there is a joint control, or there is a significant influence, you need to have this only on the reporting entity. I hope, friends, I am making complete sense. Let's see this diagrammatically as well. But I hope I am making complete sense on what I said. All right. So let's, I think, do one thing. Let's start making some notes as well along with this. So having a look at now the para number 9E. So I'm looking at the inputs which is given in terms of para number 9E. So this is the definition. This is the definition of related party. This is the definition of related party. And please note down this because I'm giving you some crucial, important crux notes at this stage. The focus is in terms of para number 9A. And here the focus is on a person. The focus is on person. And it's not only on a person, but it is also on the close member. And yet to define what is a close member. Close member of that person's family. Close member of that person's family. We yet to see what does this mean. So the focus is on a person, or the focus is on the close member of that person's family. So in this particular case, we can say that diagrammatically, we can see the situation like this, that this is the person. And when I say the person, automatically consider including the close member. So we are saying that there are three kinds of clauses which are given out here. I can say this is the clause number 1, this is the clause number 2, and this is the clause number 3. What you need to keep in mind is the clause 1 is strong relationship. So we can say this is the reporting entity. So there is either a control or there is a joint control. And this is the reporting entity. And here there is a significant influence. And here there is a case of a KMP. This is a reporting entity. Now the only difference is that this person could be a KMP of the reporting entity or the parent of a reporting entity. The parent of the reporting entity. I think you can now easily visualize the concept of para number 9A with clause 1 to 3. If somebody were to, tell me that what is the focus point, I would say, okay, para number 9A, the focus point is person. The clause A, the focus point is the joint, the strong relationship, control and the joint control. The focus in terms of clause 2 is a weak relationship, significant influence. And the third one is also a weak relationship, that is a KNP. The reason of segregating the weak relationship is here we do not have the parent of the reporting entity, and here we've got a parent of the reporting entity. So it's very easy to remember that this is based on, I think I'll just make a mention for your later revision, that this clause is based on, you can say, a strong relationship. And this particular clause is based on a weak relationship. And this is again based on a weak relationship. But the idea of segregating the clause 2 and 3 is because of this factor. That this factor is there in the KNP, but this factor is not there in terms of the significant influence, right? Now, the only thing left over is to understand the close member of that person's family. Let me get the input first of all, friends, from your side. Am I 100% clear on the para number 9A, clause 1, clause 2, and clause 3? You don't need to cram the definition. You just need to keep in mind that the person has got a control or a joint control, 1. The person has got a significant influence over the reporting entity, 2. The person is a key MP of the entity reporting or the parent of the reporting entity, that is clause 3. Well, I guess this is pretty much clear indeed. Okay, so this is clear. Super. Now let's take it further. Now I need to understand the concept of the close member of the family. So we're going to focus now on this, then what is a close member of that person's family? So we're going to see this. Let's have a look at the definition. So I'm going out of the definition of para 9. I'm going out of the related party definition to understand the concept of the close member of the family. So I've shared the definition as well. Let's have a look at the close member. Now I'm going to give you another very systematic diagram to understand the concept of a close member of the family. Okay, let's have a look now on the close member of the family. It's a brilliant definition in terms of the international scenario of relationship. You know, when I look at this definition, I really can't stop myself from singing a song. The weather is pretty good, and I don't want to sing a song. I don't just want to, give you the lyrics of a particular song. If you've seen a very old movie, there was a movie in Bollywood which was called Mera Naam Joker. And in that movie, there was a very interesting song which you might have heard of, and it says, Upar bhi dekho, niche bhi dekho, dai bhi dekho, bai bhi dekho. So it's when looking at all the kind of things, upar bhi, niche bhi, dai bhi, bai bhi, left, right, top, and bottom. And trust me, the concept of close member of the family has taken consequence of all kind of connected relationship. Let's have a look. It says close member of the family of a person are those family members who may be expected. It says who may be expected to influence or be influenced by that person in the dealings with the entity. So these are the people who may be expected to influence the person, or that person may get influenced by those family members when he deals with the reporting entity. Now see what it says, including, it says that person's children, then he says spouse or a domestic partner. Domestic partner, would be a case of a living relationship, but not legally married. Spouse would be a case where there would be a legal marriage as well. Then it says brother, and then it says sister, father, and mother. So he's including the brother, sister, father, mother. He's including that person's children, spouse, or domestic partner. Then he says children of that person's spouse or children of the domestic partner. And then he says dependents of that person or dependents of that person's spouse or the dependents of the domestic partner. So how would we remember this particular definition? It's very simple. I'll make a diagram and we will insert all the relationship which are a part of the close member. Let's have a look. So let me just go back and give you the insight in terms of what is a close member of the family. I think I need a little more space. So let me do this on the next page. So let's, I think, create a small little chart out here in terms of the close member of the family. Now, no gender bias. I'm just taking Mr. X as a base. I'm taking Mr. X as a base. You can take Mrs. X also as a base. There is no problem. But I'm taking Mr. X as a base. So let's consider the base to be Mr. X. This is the person. This is the person, Mr. X. So एक तरफ है घर वाली और एक तरफ है बाहर वाली. Sorry. This is just to explain the kind of relationship. So we can say एक तरफ है घर वाली, which means the spouse. And the other hand, we've got ek taraf hai bahar wali, and that is what we can say DP, that is a domestic partner. So this is DP, and that is a domestic partner. Pretty simple to understand. So this is, you can say, one relationship. So we can see that the person, spouse of the person, and the domestic partner of the person. Okay. Now on the top of Mr. X is going to be what? Father and mother. So we can consider father and mother. So that is what we consider another related family, close member of the family, the father and mother of Mr. X. We consider the father and mother of Mr. X. Okay, next. We're also considering the brother and sister. We're also considering the brother and sister of Mr. X. So we can see that we're considering the brother and sister as well. So father, mother, brother, sister, and then we've got spouse and the domestic partner. Next, what we are considering in this case is we are considering the children. We are considering the children of Mr. X. The children of Mr. X. That doesn't mean that they're children from this spouse. They could be children from a previous spouse. It doesn't mean that they're children of the domestic partner. It could be, children not related to the spouse of the domestic partner. The fellow might have married, two, three times, whatever, international scenario. Okay, now when you're looking at the spouse, we are also looking at the children of this spouse. The children of the spouse may not be the children of Mr. X. Maybe she was married earlier. So we're looking at the children of that spouse. We're looking at Mr. X children. We're looking at the spouse children. We're looking at the children of the domestic partner. We're looking at the children of the domestic partner. And we are also looking at dependents. We're also looking at dependents. We're also looking at dependents. And here also, we are also looking at dependents. Isn't that pretty easy to understand the definition, I guess? So children and the dependents out here, children and the dependents out here, and children and the dependents out here. Wow, that takes care of the definition in terms of the close member of the family. So you can say when you're looking at Mr. X, we are looking at the father, mother, the brother, sister, the spouse and the domestic partner. We're looking at the children and dependents of the spouse, of the concerned person, and of the domestic partner as well. I think I'd just like to go back to the definition so that you can visualize it better. Let's see if you have covered all the permutation combinations or not. It says that person's children, done. Spouse or domestic partner, done. Brother, sister, father, mother, all done. Then he says children of that person's spouse, done. Or children of domestic partner, done. Dependents of that person, done. Or that person's spouse or domestic partner, all done. So I think it's very easy. You don't need to cram the definition. You just need to understand the spirit of the definition, that when you're looking at the close member of the family, when you're looking at the close member of the family, your focus is got to be that you're looking at the legally wedded spouse and the domestic partner with a live-in relationship, your father, mother, your brother, sisters, and the children and dependents of each one of them. The children and dependent of the concerned person, the spouse and the domestic partner, these are called the close member of that person's family. I hope I am pretty much clear on this. Okay, so I think this takes care of my clause number 9A and the subclauses 1 to 3. Trust me, if you just go to close your eyes for a minute, and you're just going to recall the concept of the para number 9, clause A, 1 to 3, you can easily just recall the entire thing. It's such a pretty interesting and a beautiful standard. The moment you start close your eyes and you start thinking in terms of the clause number para number 9A, you say the focus is on the person or the close member of that person's family. And when you start thinking that who is a close member of that person's family, you start thinking father, mother, brother, sister, spouse and domestic partner, children and dependents of each of the 3 categories. And then when you start looking at the para number 9A clause 1 to 3, you said 1 is on a strong relationship, control and joint control. Second is on a weak relationship, but only significant influence. And the third one is on the concept that there is a KMP. And why we segregated the third clause? Because in terms of KMP, the person or the close member can be either KMP of the reporting entity, or it can be a KMP of the parent entity of the reporting entity. Wow. Let's get your comfort zones at this stage on a scale of 10 so far. I think it should be 10 out of 10. I don't think it should be even 9 out of 10. That's what I personally feel. Let's get your comfort zones on only the application of para number 9A, clause 1, 2, 3. I think I've given you enough framework with which you can easily grasp the concept of para 9A. Let's go to the para number 9B, and in between we get your comfort zones. Okay, none of these sets of parent, brother, sister also includes a step brother, step sister. No clarifications are given in this particular case, but I considering the legal interpretations of law, I would say a yes, but there is no interpretation which is given on Ind AS 24 on this area, whether a brother would include or a sister would include a step brother or sister. No inputs are given on that. Okay, Koshki said, so dependents of father, mother, and brother, sister will also be included. Dependents of Mr. X, not the dependents of the father. No, the definition is very clear that that person's dependent, the spouse dependent, or the domestic partner's dependent. So when you're looking at the dependents or you're looking at the children, you're looking at from the point of view of Mr. X. Then Mr. X dependents, Mr. X children, or the spouse, the you can say the dependents or children of the spouse of Mr. X, or the dependents or the children of the domestic partner of Mr. X. So it has to be from the point of view of Mr. X, right? Okay, Koshki said, so please redefine the point number 3 of a close member. Okay, let me just come back to the definition again, and I think correlate this in terms of the definition. Let's have a look once again on the definition. See what it says. It says that person's children, that person's spouse, or that person's domestic partner, brother, sister, father, mother. So what is the focus? The focus in clause A is, I'm considering both the clauses, I'll come to the third one as well. The focus is in terms of that person's. That means Mr. X children, Mr. X spouse, Mr. X domestic partner, brother, sister, father, mother. Then he says children of that person's spouse. So now what is the focus? That spouse. The focus is the spouse and the children of the spouse or the children of the domestic partner. The clause E is from the point of view of Mr. X. The clause B is from the point of view of the spouse or the domestic partner, the children of the spouse, the children of the domestic partner. Now look at the focus in clause C, dependents of that person. The focus is that person's spouse. So the focus is spouse dependents and the focus is domestic partners dependent. So if you look at the clause ABC carefully, you can say clause A is from the point of view of Mr. X. I would say the focus of clause E is Mr. X. The focus of clause number B in this case is supposed to be from the spouse or the domestic partner of Mr. X. And the focus of C is from the point of view of Mr. X also, the spouse also, and the domestic partner also. Because you're considering the dependence of Mr. X, you're considering the dependence of the spouse of Mr. X, you're considering the dependence of the domestic partner. So it is all from the 3 point of view. So whose dependents or whose children are we talking of? The domestic partner or the spouse children and the dependents, right? Okay. Right, friends. So I think this is pretty much clear now. Okay, Namrata, you go to question. And Koshki tells me completely 10 by 10. That's wonderful indeed. Okay, Namrata, you said, so 2 persons are not in living relationship, but they are in relationship. Then also it's a domestic partner. 2 partners are not in a living relationship, but they are in a relationship. Then how do you define that they are in a living relationship, but not in a relationship? I am got a little confused. I think if they are not legally married, and if you're calling them we're just friends, I think I call it as a domestic partner. I don't know how to put that further. Okay, that was interesting. Okay, so I think the clause number 9A and the sub clauses 1 to 3 is well understood. Now let's go to the focus in terms of B. If you notice something or not, let me also give you one focus point at this particular stage very clear, because I think this should not be creating any confusion later. That in terms of para number 9E, if you see the arrow directions of my arrow, what is important is that the directions of the arrow is all flowing down. It's a one-sided relationship. So I would like to make a mention that this is all one-sided relationship. You can see the presence of the arrow that it is down, down, down. It's nowhere flowing the other way around. It's not a two-way traffic. It's like a one-way traffic. So one of the major important inputs focused on para number 9A is the one-sided relationship, that as a person you control, as a person you've got a signal influence, as a person you're a KMP. So it's not the other way around. But in para number 9B, you're going to see two-sided relationship. The arrows might flow in the 2 directions. Okay, let's go now to the para number 9B. Okay, so let's have a look, friends, now on the para number 9B. Now, let's focus very carefully because we need to go to each clause one by one, and I'm going to read every clause, give you a diagram to each clause, and then proceed. Okay. It says an entity, the focus is an entity is related to the reporting entity if any of the following conditions are met. You meet any of the condition, the entity is got to be related to the reporting entity. Let's look at the first one. It says the entity and the reporting entity are members of the same group. It says they are member of the same group. When I use the word group, it only means parent and subsidiary, no associate and no joint ventures. So when I use the word group, the concept of group in this particular case is going to be considered as only parents and subsidiary. It says, which means that each parent, subsidiary, and the fellow subsidiary is related to each other. I think let's give you some permutation combinations arising out of the clause number one. Let's get back to the diagram. So let me now focus in terms of a diagrammatic position in terms of the para number 9b. So we're focusing in terms of para number 9b, where the focus is on the entity. The focus is on the entity, unlike a person in terms of clause A. Now we're looking at the first clause, and I think we can make a lot of permutation combination. This is A limited, and this is B limited, and let's say A limited is the reporting entity. I'm looking at A limited is a reporting entity in this particular case. So we can say that there is a control. A controls B. So A controls B. This is one simple case. Can it be the other way around as well? Yes. Can you see the two-sided relationships now? Unlike the clause A of para 9, which was one-sided, this has got to be two-sided. So I think I'd like to make a mention out here that here we can see that it is a two-sided relationship. So when I say two-sided relationship, you control another entity or another entity controls you. You mean the reporting entity in this case. Now, another inputs we can see in this case is, let's say, for example, a situation, there is A limited, let's say it is the reporting entity, and we've got B limited. I'm putting the arrows down, and let's say there is a C limited, and this is control, A controls B, and B, A also controls C. Now you can even remember the triangular relationship which I gave you earlier. You can even apply the concept of a triangular relationship and see that this is a kind of a triangle where on the left and the right hand side there is a control, and even otherwise this is covered with a clause number 1. Because in this particular case, if you notice in terms of clause number 1, this is called, these B and C are definitely related, and they are called fellow subsidiaries. And they are called fellow subsidiaries. So they are called fellow subsidiaries. So we can say each one of them is related. This is called that they are a part of a group. This is called that they are a part of a group company. So everybody is related to each other. A is related to B and C. B is related to A and C. C is related to A and B. Because there is a relationship of control, there is a fellow subsidiary, control, fellow subsidiary. So everybody is a part of the group company. So the clause number 1 focuses only on one kind of relationship, and that is control. Mind you, the focus in terms of the clause number 1 is only one, that is a control. So we are saying that either you control another entity or you are controlled by another entity, or it's a group kind of a situation where you've got fellow subsidiary as well. This is the clause number 1. I guess pretty clear on this particular case. Okay, now let's go on further. This was clause 1. Let's go to the clause number 2. Okay, now in terms of the clause number 2, we're looking at the clause number 2 of the clause subclause B. It says one entity is an associate or a joint venture of the other entity. Did you notice something again? The focus in terms of clause 1 is on a strong relationship of just control, not even a joint control, not even a joint control. The standard setters, when they were defining the definition in terms of the clause number B, they focused only on one strong relationship control. They didn't even take the concept of joint control in clause 1. They've taken the concept of a joint control and a significant influence collectively in terms of clause number 2. There must have been a reason. It says one entity is an associate or joint venture of the other entity, or an associate or a joint venture of a member of a group of which the other entity is a member. We'll come to the brackets. Let's, I think, diagrammatically have a look. So there are two kind of things which are being mentioned. One entity is an associate, or one entity is a joint venture of the other entity, and then we'll come to the brackets. So let's have a look, visualization in this case. So I'm coming to the clause number B. Let's have a look at the clause number 2. So let's consider there is A Limited, and this is, let's say, the reporting entity, and let's say this is B Limited, and the relationship in this case is a joint control or a significant influence. One entity is a joint venture of the other. B is a joint venture of A, or B is an associate of A. It can be the other way around as well. It can be the other way around as well, because it's a two-sided relationship. It's a two-sided relationship. So we can say B jointly controls the reporting entity, or B has got a significant influence over the reporting entity. They never use the word reporting entity in that clause. If you carefully look at the definition, see what it says. One entity is an associate, or one entity is a JV of the other entity. So in this case, that one entity could be a reporting entity, or the other entity could be a reporting entity. So it is a two-sided relationship. Either you have got a joint control over somebody, or you have a significant influence over somebody, or they've got a significant influence, or they've got a joint control over you. So both the sides. Then it says in the brackets, or an associate or JV of a member of a group of which the other entity is a member. Let's have a look. So we can take another example out here to give you an example in terms of the bracket. So let's say, for example, there is company A Limited, and let's say there is a company B Limited, and let's say there is a company C Limited, and let's say there is a company B Limited. So A Limited has got a control over B, and A has got a control over C, and let's say C has got a joint control or a significant influence over D. Now see what they were saying in terms of the clause number 2. It says a member of a group. What did it say? It said a member of a group. Now, ABC is nothing but it's a group, because we've said that parent and subsidiary creates a group. So C is a member of a group. So it says an associate or a joint venture of a member of a group. So even D is related to A. I want to take it back. I want to take it back. See what it says. Associate or joint venture of a member of a group. D is an associate or a joint venture of C, which is a member of a group company A. C is supposed to be an associate or joint venture. Sorry, D is an associate or joint venture of C, which is a member of the group, of which the other entity is a member. So if you've got a group and there is an associate or there is a joint venture of that group, they've also considered that as a part of the clause number 2. Just have a look at the diagram once again. So we can say in this particular case, if I focus out here, we can say this is supposed to be a group. ABC is supposed to be a group. So we are saying that if you've got associate or joint ventures of a group company, Even if, let's say, there is an associate or joint venture of B, which is a group company, then also we are considering. So what is the focus in terms of the clause number two? The focus in terms of clause number two is a joint control and a significant influence. So this is now getting a little heavy. Could you just consolidate the inputs in terms of para number 9b, clause 1 and 2? Let me now give you the massive focus before we take it further. So when you're looking at the clause number B1, when you're looking at the clause number B1, remember the focus is purely control. The focus is just control. No joint control, no significant influence. The focus is only on control. So in terms of control, just imagine I control someone, somebody controls me, or there is a group company. That's it. I, as a reporting entity, control someone, or another company controls me, or we are all a part of the group company. The focus is purely just on one relationship, control. That's it. No relationship is there in clause number B1 except the concept of control. So either as a reporting entity, you control someone, or somebody controls you, or everybody is a part of the group company with a control relationship only. The focus in terms of the clause number 2 is in terms of joint control and a significant influence. No KMP, no control. So we said that you jointly control somebody, or somebody jointly controls you. You got a significant influence over somebody, or somebody's got a significant influence over you. Two-sided, of course, is the mantra. So it's either that you are jointly controlling, or you've got a significant influence, or somebody has got a joint control, or somebody's got a significant influence over you. And they just made a little clarification that even the group companies, associates, and JV, the basic clarification is that the group companies, associates, and JVs are also related to the group. That means in this case, B is going to be related to all the three companies, that is ABC. Right, friends? I hope I'm clear on clause 1, control, focus, and the clause number 2, joint control and a significant influence focus. Let's see if any questions coming so far in between. Okay, nothing so far. That's great. Let's now take it further. Now let's go to the clause number 3. So this was clause number 2. Now let's see clause number 3, which is pretty simple and straight indeed. Now, in terms of clause number 3, we are given the inputs. Both the entities are joint venturers of the same third party. So both the entities are the joint venturers of the same party. This is a triangular relationship. Let's make a chart on the clause number. Can I say this is a pure case of what a triangular relationship, where on the left hand side there is a strong, and on the right hand side there is a strong relationship, simple and straight. So I would say the focus in this particular case is on, you can say, joint control, triangular relationship. It is joint control and it is on a triangular relationship. So A and B are definitely related. A and C are definitely related. But let me caution friends. A and B are related by virtue of clause 2. A and C are related by virtue of clause 2. Mind the words carefully. They are related because of clause 2. They are related because of clause 2. But B and C are related because of clause 3. The focus in clause 3 is purely on a triangle relationship, which I gave you at the very beginning, that if you've got a strong and a strong relationship on the left and right hand side, then the parties at the base of the triangle are related. So in this case, B and C are related in this particular case, simple and straight. So just keep counting the concepts at the back of the mind. Don't worry, we'll consolidate the things later. So if you'll focus in terms of 9b, your mind should be working very clear. If you want to remember the clauses, the clause 1 focused on control only. The clause number 2 focuses on a joint control and a significant influence only. The clause number 3 is again on a triangular relationship arising on a joint control. Wow, great. Let's go to the next one. So that was clause 3. Let's have a look now at the clause number 4. So let's come back to the clause number 4. Okay, so let's have a look, friends, now on the clause number 4 with you. Let me just erase this a bit as well. So now the clause number 4, there are a couple of clauses which are given out here. So we are now on the clause number 4. Now let's see the focus in terms of clause 4. One entity is a joint venture of a third entity, and the other entity is an associate of the third entity. Let me ask you a question. If you can answer this, then your concepts are going very well. Is the clause 4 focusing on a triangle relationship, which is a left-hand side joint control strong and a right-hand side significant influence weak relationship? Is the 4th clause again devoted to a triangle relationship with a joint venture on one side and an associate on the other side? Like the clause 3 was focusing on strong, the clause 4 is focusing on a strong and weak relationship. So is the focus a triangle relationship? I think if you can answer this, then the concepts are going pretty well. Okay, I think I might be getting some answers slowly and steadily on this, but what do you say? Is it again focusing on the concept of a triangle relationship in this particular case? Let me make some notes out here on the 4th clause. So let's go to the 4th clause out here. And we can give the focus that it is again on a triangle relationship. So let's say we've got A Limited on one hand, which is a reporting entity. And we've got B Limited on one hand, and we've got C Limited on the other hand. So we're again focusing on a triangle relationship. So this is, let's say, joint control, and this is, let's say, a significant influence. So we are looking at, is B and C related? Yes, they are definitely related in a triangular relationship. And that's rightly said. Yes, it is indeed a triangular relationship. So the focus is out here, joint control on one side and significant influence on the other side. And it is again a triangular relationship in this case. So B and C are related. Let's keep looking at the cumulative revision also in this particular case as well. That's absolutely correct. Yes, it is a triangle relationship since there are 3 entities with 3 different relationships between each other. Yes. Okay. So let me just take a consolidated viewpoint now. If I'm looking at B clause only, not A, we have done the PhD, we're looking at the clause B. So what should immediately come to your mind? Clause B1, focus, control. Just control, including group companies. Then the clause number 2, focus, is in terms of a joint control and a significant influence both, but not triangle relationship. The clause number 2 is focusing on a joint control and a significant influence, but not focusing on a triangle relationship. Only clarifying that joint control and a significant influence, or if you've got a joint control or a significant influence, the subsidiaries has got associates and G. The third one is on a triangular relationship, strong, joint control. Let me now tell you as a clarification. Let me now tell you as a clarification at this stage. If you look at the triangular relationship so far, you can see in terms of the clause number 1, we were looking at a triangular relationship of control and control. The control combination was there in clause 1. Then there is a clause number 3. Then there is a clause number 4. So far, I'm just summarizing the triangle relationship. In terms of the clause number 3, we've got A, B, C, and we can see it's joint control and it's joint control. So you can see strong, you can see strong. And then in clause number 4, we can see A has got a joint control and A has got, let's say, a significant influence. This is again strong and weak. You're not going to see a combination of significant. You're not going to see a combination of KMP, etc. As it is, a person is not there at the moment. So you can see that these triangle relationships are covered under various clauses. They're covering a control. They're covering a joint control on both sides, and they're covering a joint control and salient influence. Any combination which is still left out, yes, a control and a joint control is still pending. We'll see that. But so far, so good. Okay, let's take it further. So this was on the clause number 4. Now let's go to the clause number 5. So let's have a look now at the clause number 5. So let's see the clause number 5. Now, as far as clause number 5 is concerned, I think we're leaving it for the time being because this is not exactly related to our academic point of view. So there are hardly any examples. So let's leave the clause number 5. You can read it later, but not from the point of view of examination. So let's go to clause number 6. The entity is controlled or jointly controlled by a person identified in A. By a person identified in A. Can you notice what it says out here? The entity is controlled or jointly controlled by a person. Is the focus again on a triangular relationship? Yes. But is it a two-sided relationship? No. Because in this particular case, it is the person who controls the entity or jointly controls another entity. So it's a one-sided relationship because on the top of the triangle is a person who is sitting. When you're looking at the triangle relationship in clause 1, 3, or 4, it was not a person, but it was an entity sitting on the top of the triangle. But in this particular case, the focus is that the person identified in clause E. Now, when you say a person identified in clause A, it covers A1, it covers A2, and it covers A3, mind you. When you're looking at the clause A, you're considering all three. You're covering A1, A2, A3, all the sub-clauses as well. Why I'm pinpointing that? Because if you see the clause number 7, a person identified in A1, you can see immediately in the next clause, the focus changes on a person identified in A1. A1 was a person which was covering a joint control and a control only. But when you say a person covered in A, it is covering all kinds of permutation. Don't worry, I'll give you the diagram. So it says a person identified in A1 has got a significant influence over the entity, or is a member of the key management person of the entity, or a parent of the entity. So in this clause now, you can suddenly see a change in the clause number 6 and 7, that the focus is inserting a person. Till now, when we're looking at the first 4 clauses, the focus was on the entity, and immediately now the focus is turned to a person. So let's carefully go through the diagrammatic view in terms of 6. Entity is controlled or jointly controlled. Let's have a look. So let's make a diagrammatic view in terms of the clause number 6. So let's see the clause number 6. It says the person identified in the para number 9A. It says the person identified in para number 9A. Let's first of all get this very clear. Who is this person? And of course, person includes the close member of the family as well. So let's say this is the reporting entity. So what does this person have? The person, by virtue of the clause 1, can have a control or a joint control. By virtue of clause 2, he can have a significant influence. This will be over the reporting entity, or he is a KMP. He is a KMP of the reporting entity or the parent of the reporting entity. Get this very clear. You need to first of all define what this person has a relationship. So you need to first of all define that this person has got a control or a joint control or significant influence over the reporting entity only. or this person is a key MP of the reporting entity or the parent of the reporting entity. Now, let's say on the other hand, what does it say? It says there is either a control or there is a joint control, let's say B limited. Let's call this reporting entity as A limited. So is this clause again focusing on a triangular relationship? Yes, it is again focusing on a triangular relationship where a person has got a strong or a weak relationship, but on this side there is a strong, because strong and strong or weak and strong would make A and B related to each other. The focus again on this clause is on the triangular relationship. And trust me, friends, at any point of time in the examination, if you get confused on the definition of para number 9, remember my 3 mantras, because my 3 mantras, especially the triangular relationship, is going to be of a good rescue to you. Because if you're going to see in a triangular relationship that there is a strong, or there is a strong, weak, and it doesn't make a difference on the top of the pyramid is a person. On the top of the pyramid is an entity. But what is important is that at the base of the pyramid, there are supposed to be entities in this case, right? So in this particular case, again, we can make a mention that A and B limited are now related. So A and B are now related in this case. And I would say the focus in this particular case is again on a triangular relationship. It is again on a triangular relationship with the left-hand side being a strong and weak relationship, but on the right-hand side, we've got a strong relationship in this case. Right. I know this must be getting a little heavy as we're going through the things, but I think once you make a revision, especially of the clause number B, but don't worry, we'll consolidate, it will be wonderful indeed. So this is clause number 6. Now let's have a look at the clause number 7. Now let's have a look at the clause number 7. Now I need to go back and have a look at the clause number 7 definition. So let's have a look at the clause number 7 inputs now. A person identified in A1. Now what is this person identified in A1? With a control or a joint control over the reporting entity, that's it. So the person identified in A1 has got a significant influence or is a member of the key MP of the other entity. So this is again based on a strong and a weak relationship again. So we'll look at the clause number 7. We can say there is a person, and this person of course includes the close member of the family's person. The focus is on para number 9A and subclause 1 only. This was A. So this was including A1, including A2, and including A3. But this is including only A1. It's not including 2. It's not including 3. So this is not including 2 and 3. That focus has to be kept clear. So in terms of the difference between the clause 6 and 7, you need to see in clause 6, we are considering all the persons identified in 9A. But in terms of the point number 7, we are focusing only on the person which is identified as per the clause number 9A1 only. So who is this person who is got over the reporting entity, let's say A limited? Either there is a control or a joint control. That's it. Strong. You can see it is strong and weak. It is only strong. So right hand side, we can have a weak relationship as well. So if we consider B limited, there is either a significant influence or there is a key MP. So it's weak on the right hand side. The focus again is on a triangular relationship. You can see many of the clauses are only concentrated on a strong and a weak relationship. We'll do a couple of questions also later. So in this particular case, we can focus that as far as A and B is concerned, they are related. The focus in terms of this clause again is on a triangular relationship. It is again a focus on a triangular relationship where on the left hand side we've got strong and on the right hand side we've got a weak relationship indeed. Okay, wow. So I think let's consolidate a little input before we go to the last clause in this case. So the mind is working now like this. If I look at the para number 9b, if I look at the para number 9b, let's get a focus in terms of the para number 9b. In terms of the focus in para number 9b, the first one focus is control. Is it also including a triangle relationship? Yes. Please hear the next few minutes very carefully. So when you're looking at the focus in clause 1, the focus is on control. Is it also including a triangle relationship? Yes. Strong, strong on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. Then we went to the clause number 2, where the focus is in terms of joint control and a significant influence, but no triangle relationship. In this case, the focus is on a joint control and a significant influence, but no triangle relationship. But we said that if you've got a group companies, associate or JVs, they are also going to be taken. So your group company has an associate, your group company has a JV, we're going to consider them also related. Then we went to the clause number 3, and in terms of clause number 3, 4, the focus is triangular relationship. The focus is completely on a triangle relationship where it is strong on the left-hand side. Focus is joint control. In clause number 1, the focus was triangle relationship control. The focus was a triangle relationship of control. In the clause number 3, the focus on a triangle relationship is a joint control. Then came the clause number 4, which is again supposed to be triangular control. In terms of clause number 4, it is joint control and significant influence. I'm just trying to give you the maximum, in terms of comparatives. Then we came to the clause 5. We said, let's leave the clause 5 from the examination point of view. Then in terms of clause number 6 and 7, immediately we switch to a person. We're still on a triangle relationship, but we switched our inputs to the concept of a person. The difference between the clause 6 and 7 is that 6 is covering every person of para number 9A, 1, 2, 3. The clause number 7 is working on a person and is covering only one kind of person, which is 9A1, who's got a control or a joint control. The focus is on strong on the left-hand side. The focus out here is a strong and a weak relationship on the left-hand side. And then in the clause number 6, we focus on strong, because this is strong and weak, so we need to focus only on strong. And in this case, it is supposed to be strong, so the focus is only on weak. That is how the parties at the below part of the triangle gets related. So the clause number 6 and 7 is on triangle relationship with the persons coming into between. I hope I am pretty much clear on the clause 1, control. The clause number 2, control and a joint control. A joint control and significant influence, but no triangles. Clause number 3 and clause number 4 is on triangles. And clause number 6 and 7 is again on triangular with a person coming into between. So finally, we're left with the clause number 8. So the last clause in the definition, and that is the clause number 8. So let's have a look at the clause number 8. It says the entity or any member of the group. It says the entity or any member of the group of which it is a part is providing key management services to the reporting entity. I would say, even from the examination point of view, you can just have a read on this. There's no need of getting into detail on the clause para number 5 and the para number 8. Because in this particular case, again, we're looking at the reporting entity or any member of that reporting entity is providing key management services to the reporting entity. Sorry, a third entity or any member of the group of that entity is providing KMP services to the reporting entity or the parent of the reporting entity. So not really connected with that. If you're able to get the graphs in terms of the para number 9A, 1 to 3, and in terms of the para number 9B, which is clause 1 to 8, leave the 5th one, leave the 8th one, I think the job gets done. Okay, so far so good. I think it's time to give you some break as well. So I guess let me see if you're getting any questions so far at this particular stage. Okay, I think this is clear. Shriram sir, okay, now that was the earlier question. Okay, so far so clear. Right, friends. So I think now we just going to take a small little break for 10, 12 minutes. And today, in fact, we'll also be joined with the faculty from the Board of Studies as well. I think Shilpa ma'am would be joining us almost around, I think around 9:30, 9:45. But don't worry, so we'll be able to wind up our standard also by that time because we've covered up the para number 9 so far with you. I just need to take you to the para number 11 and a clarification on para 12 and the exemptions under para number 25. So not much technicalities left over. So we'll just take a quick 10, 12 minutes break and then we commence back further with you. So let's take a break, friends, at this stage. Okay, completely clear. That's wonderful indeed. Welcome back, friends. So we were discussing the definition which is given for related party in para number 9, and we've had a focus in terms of the clause A, which focuses whether a person is related or not, and the focus in terms of the clause number B, in which we had various clauses where we're focusing on a entity is related to the reporting entity or not. And we've seen that the main thrust in terms of the para number 9b, a lot of clauses, like for example, the clause 1, the clause number 3, the clause number 4, and the clause number 6 and 7 is focusing on a triangular relationships indeed. So you can see a lot of clauses are focusing on a triangular relationship. So what comes to our input is that if you're looking at any kind of triangle relationship, just keep the very most important principle which I gave you, that on the left or the right hand side, there has to be a strong, or there has to be a strong, weak, or a weak, strong relationship. But the moment you've got a weak relationship, as you can see in the definition, there is no permutation combination where on the left and right hand side, if there is a weak relationship, then the parties at the base of the triangle would get related. Right, so this was on what is included in the related party. Now we're going to focus in terms of what is not included in a related party. But before that, a small little clarification which is given in the standard. And I'd like to draw your attention to the inputs in para number 12, which gives us a little clarification of what is not a, what is a clarification to the para number 9. So let's, I think, have a look at the para number 12 to begin with. I'm just going to give you a further clarification on this agenda. Now, if you look at the para number 12, it says in the definition of a related party, it says an associate includes a subsidiary of the associate, and a joint venture includes a subsidiary of the joint venture. It says when I make a reference to an associate, even a subsidiary of the associate would be included. When we make a reference to a joint venture, even the subsidiary of the joint venture is included, which means, for example, if you're looking at, let's say, A, and A is, let's say, got a significant influence over B. So B is an associate. Now, let's say B is got a control over C. So it says an associate includes a subsidiary of the associate. So C is a subsidiary of the associate, and we're saying that A and C is also related. Indirectly, you can say he's talking of a chain holding. Indirectly, you can say he's talking of a chain holding. Now, hear me very carefully. There was an input with reference to a chain holding in terms of the clause number 2, if you remember. And now there is another reference in terms of para number 12, which talks of indirectly a chain. Now, what is important in the chain is that there is a significant influence followed by a strong relationship of control. And then it says a JV also includes a subsidiary of the JV. So let's say if there is a joint control A has on B, and it has got a control over C, then also A and C are related. So one thing very carefully, I think I like to pinpoint now another clarification, which is chain holding relationship. Let me still read further. Therefore, for example, an associate subsidiary and the investor that has got a significant influence of the associate are related. So indirectly we're saying A and C are also related. So let's give you a clarification chart now on the concept of a chain holding. Just like triangular relationship, you also need to consider the chain holding relationships as well. So let me just give you a few diagrams on this schematic. Okay, let's, I think, add a clarification chart with reference to the chain holding clarification. So this is now chain holding. Chain holding basically means that there is a chain A in B, B in C that becomes a chain. So let's take some permutation combinations to begin with. Let's consider there is a company A which has got a control over B and which has got a control over C. So A has got a control over B and B has got a control over C. Now this is a case which is like a fellow subsidiary. not fell subsidiary, but I can say that A is got to control the B and B is got to control the C. Therefore, A and C are related. So in this case, A and C are related. So this is one situation where you can see, and let me give you one focus. There is a strong relationship and there is a strong relationship. So when you see a case of a chain holding and you see that there is a strong and strong relationship down the flow, strong, the parties A and C are related. The top company and the bottom company are related. Let's take another example. Now, if you consider, let's say there is A and let's say there is B and let's say there is C. Now, this is, let's say, control. And let's say this is an associate. This is an associate. So let me put it as significant influence. So let me put it as significant influence. Remember the para number 9b clause number 2, in which case we said that if a group company is going to associate, if a group company is going to associate, or even if it is a joint control, then also A and C are related. So this is by virtue of, you can say, the para number 9b and the clause number 2, which we did. In which case we said that if a group company, let's say, for example, there could be a possibility that there is a company D as well on which A is got a control. So we can say that this company A, B, D is supposed to be a group. This is supposed to be a group. But I would say that even if it is not a group, doesn't make a difference. At the end of the day, we are saying that an associate of a subsidiary or a joint venture of a subsidiary is included. So moral of the story, a subsidiary, I'm looking at the case 1. A subsidiary's subsidiary is related to the parent. We can say an associate of the subsidiary is related to the parent. A joint venture of the subsidiary is related to the parent. I hope you're hearing it very carefully. I'm saying a subsidiary of a subsidiary. C is a subsidiary of B related to A. In this case, we are saying that C is an associate of B, or C is a joint venture of B, then it is related to A. So even in this particular case, we are saying that A and C are related. Even in this case, A and C are related. This is para number 9b, clause number 2. Then there is another third situation which we saw in terms of para number 12. There is another situation which we saw in terms of para number 12, and that is a subsidiary of an associate. So let's say there is a company A and there is a company B and there is a company C. Now in this particular case, let's say A has got a joint control over B, or it has got a significant influence over B. What does the para number 12 tell me? That if there is a control in this case, then also A and C are related in this case. A and C are related in this case. So this is another very important conclusion chart. Just like I gave you a triangle relationship, this is a chart which is giving you a chain holding clarification. So you need to be careful that if you've got subsidiary connected, if you've got a subsidiary associate or a joint control connected, if you've got a joint venture significant influence control connected, can you see that this is exactly an opposite situation? You can see it is exactly an opposite situation. On the top of the chain is control, followed by a significant influence or a joint control. And here you've got a joint control or significant influence followed with the concept of control. So para number 12 gives you a clarification, which is exactly a reverse of what is given in the para number 9b2. I hope I am pretty much clear on this. Don't worry, we're going to make some good, interesting mind map conclusions at the end of the session. So these are the three situations. Situation number 1, then this is situation number 2, and this is situation number 3. Right, so I think the para number 9 and the clarification in para number 12 is taken care. So now we know what are the relationships which are related in nature. Now we're going to go to the focus in terms of para 11, where the standard gives us the input that these parties are not related. Let's see if there is any questions coming so far. Otherwise, we take the journey forward. Okay, I think we've got a question, Koshki. In shareholding case 2, D and C are related. Yes, in fact, in this case, everybody is related. Because in this particular case, A would say that D, B, C is related to me. So correspondingly with the reciprocal, we would say yes, C and D would also get related in this case. Correct. And none of these said in 9B, D and C, I think you have the same question. Yes, D and C are going to be related in this particular case. Yes, of course. Okay, wonderful indeed. Now let's go further. Now we're going to focus in terms of a negative list, where the standard gives you a clarifications that these are not a case of related party. We are not saying that this is a case of exemption. We are saying that apparently the standard very clearly says that if this kind of relationship is present, it is not considered to be a related party. So let's, I think, take it forward. So I have just inserted the extract of the para number 11, and let's have a look at the negative list, what is not a related party. So the para number 11, it says in the context of the standard, the following are not related parties. So we are given a clarifications on D point. You know, before I read these particular clauses, let me tell you what is the spirit of the standard setters in terms of making an exclusion in terms of para 11. Many a times we would feel that if there is a financial dependence of an entity on a particular customer, you know, let's say, for example, I have only one customer with me, so he is going to pay me money, that's how I survive. Well, that doesn't mean that my financial dependence creates a relationship with the other person. So the standard setters had a very good focus in mind that simply if you're saying that there is a financial dependence, it doesn't trigger any kind of relationship. Let's have a read. It says two entities simply because they have a director or another KMP in common, or because a member of the KMP of one entity has a significant influence over the other entity. If you typically ask me in terms of this clause 1, I think they are giving a clarification to the triangular relationship, where you can see that there is a presence of a weak relationship on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. See, two entities, look at the two entities at the bottom of the triangle. Two entities are not related if they have a director or a KMP in common, or they have a KMP for one and a significant influence of the other. So I think let's do one thing. Let's, I think, simultaneously give you some notes as well. So if I just give a clarification in terms of the para number 11, so we are saying that what are not related party. So what are not related party? And the focus is, you don't need to remember the para number 11. And the focus is on the clause number 1. So you can say that there is Mr. X, plus of course, I'm looking at the close member of the family as well. So let's say, for example, in this case, there is company A Limited and there is a company B Limited, and it says he is a KMP of A and he is a KMP of B. This is one input given. It's a weak on the left-hand side. And I think I know with my conclusion itself that if there is a common director, A has got a common director of KMP, B has got a common director KMP, then A and B are not related by virtue of para number 11. So in this particular case, we can say A and B are not related. The logic is simple. The logic in this case is simple because it is giving you a clarification on a triangular relationship. And in this particular case, in case of a triangular relationship, there is a weak relationship on the left-hand side and there is a weak relationship on the right-hand side as well. So I think even if I don't read para number 11, I already know with my logics that yes, if it is a weak, they're not related. Another input which is given in terms of para number 11 is that there is Mr. X and let's say a close member of the family. And in this case, there is A Limited, let's say it's a KMP. And let's say there is B Limited and it says it's a case of significant influence. Again, we can see it's a weak relationship, and therefore, in this case, we can say A and B are not related. So in this case, again, A and B are not related. The logic is again the same. And the logic is that it's a left and a right hand side in a triangle relationship, which is a weak combination. So I think even if you don't read the para number 11 clause 1, we know this well in advance that in a triangle, the left and right side, if it is weak, KMP, cigarette influence or KMP, and that's the only permutation combinations of weak relationship. And that would not create a related party between A and B. Simple. Okay, let's, I think, take this further. And let's have a look further on the next one. Now, this is interesting again, the clause number B. Now, in terms of the clause number B, we are given two joint venturers. I'm not saying two joint ventures. I'm not saying two joint ventures. I'm saying two joint venturers. Now, when I say two joint venturers, it means that if A and B together start a venture, they're going to be called as co-venturers. So if A and B together start a company C Limited where A and B have got a 50% stake, that doesn't mean that the co-venturers are related to each other. So it says the two joint venturers simply because they share a joint control of a JV. But I'd like to give you a clarification because sometimes this could create a little point of confusion. So let me just give you an inputs out here. So in this particular case, if I'm looking at the clause number 2 or the clause number B, whatever you put it, let's give you a clarification now. So there is a situation, let's say there is a company A Limited and it is got a joint control over B and it has got a joint control over C. In this particular case, this is not a case of para 11. If you're looking at A Limited, that he has a joint control over B or A has got a joint control over C, this is clearly given in terms of what? It is clearly given a triangle relationship in para number 9B. So we said B and C are related. In this case, we can say B and C are related. And they are related by virtue of the para number 9B. The para number 9B is very clearly giving you this triangle relationship that they are related. So what is para number 11 telling me? Para number 11 is telling me that let's say, for example, there is A Limited and there is B Limited and they create an entity C. A has got a joint control over C and B also has a joint control over C. So basically in this particular case, A and B are supposed to be, you can say, co-venturers. We can say in this particular case, A and B is supposed to be co-venturers because they are party to the same entity. They've got joint control collectively over each other. So in this case, para number 11 tells me that they are not related. Simply because they have a joint control over an entity C, that doesn't mean that they are related. So if you've got a joint control on two different entities, you know, A has got a joint control over B with somebody else. A has got a joint control over C with somebody else. So A with some other parties jointly controls B, and A with some other parties jointly controls C. Then B and C are related by virtue of para number 9B. But if you're considering that they are parties to the same joint venture, so they've got they're parties, they're co-venturers themselves, parties to the same venture, then in this case, A and B are not related. This is a clarification in terms of para 11, right? I hope I am pretty much clear on the clarification. Okay, that's good. Let's take it further. Let's see more inputs on para 11. So this was the two clauses. Then I think the other clauses are pretty simple and straight. And if you look at the clause number C, it is pretty simple. It says if you've got providers of finance, you've got trade unions, you've got public utilities, and it says departments and agencies of government that does not jointly control or significantly influence the reporting entity. So you're looking at the departments and government agencies, but these government departments and agencies should not have a control or a joint control or a significant influence over the reporting entity. So he says that the government departments and the agencies do not have any kind of control or joint control. So your trade unions, your providers of finance, your public utilities, or if you're dealing with government departments, they would not be construed as related. Simply by virtue of their normal dealings with the entity, even though they may affect the freedom of action of an entity or participate in decision-making process. So like, for example, if you're dealing with the government, for example, they might restrict you and they might restrict you in certain sense, but those restrictions cannot be construed as a related party. Because sometimes there might be, some kind of conditions because if you're dealing with a certain agency, but that doesn't mean that the kind of arrangement you run with them puts you into a related party relationship. The providers of finance may ask that, you cannot do this. You need to take a permission to do that. So they are only trying to safeguard their interests. The trade unions, for example, might restrict an entity. So they're only trying to safeguard themselves. So the providers of finance, the trade unions, the government departments and agencies, the public utilities whom with you deal on a normal transactions are not related party. And then finally, the focus is means a single. And I said, if you've got a person, a single customer, a single supplier, your financial dependence doesn't create a relationship with the other person. So it says if you've got a customer, a supplier, a franchisor, a distributor, a agent with whom an entity transacts a significant volume of business simply by virtue of resulting in an economic dependence. So maybe you've got, let's say, more than one customer, but if you're transacting with a customer or a supplier or agent distributor, and you've got significant volume of transaction with that person, that may indicate a financial dependence, but a financial dependence would not trigger a related party relationship. I don't think so. I need to document the clause C and D. I think that is pretty much clear indeed. Okay. So moral of the story, so far, so good. So what have we learned so far in terms of Ind AS 24? Don't worry, we're now going to do some practical illustrations. But before that, I need to give you a little insight on the exemption part on 25. The standard effectively gets over almost at this stage. So what have you done in terms of focus so far? I have given you the insights. Let me tell you the formal and the informal way. I'll give you, what I've given you, the formal and the informal learning. I'll give you first of all the formal learning and then the informal learning, which is going to be of immense help in doing practical illustrations. The formal learning which you've got out of the standard is that we need to understand in terms of para number 9 and in terms of para number 12 that what is included in related party. So the focus is in terms of para 9 and 12 that what is included in related party. Para number 12 is indirectly acting as a clarification to the concept and telling you that if you've got a subsidiary of an associate or if you've got a subsidiary of a joint venture, it is considered to be related to the top company. So that's like a clarification. So when you look at the para number 9, the focus is being in terms of clause A and it is being in terms of clause B. When the focus is being in terms of the clause number A, you have concentrated on 3 clauses in this particular case, and we understood that the first focus is on a control. The first focus is purely on a control. So we are focusing on a control and a joint control. The second one is on a significant influence, and the third one is on a KMP. And why we made a distinction on that is also clear, because in terms of KMP, we are also considering a parent of the reporting entity. In terms of clause number B, the focus on the clause 1 is on control. The focus in terms of the clause number 2 is on a joint control and a significant influence. But it doesn't talk of technically a triangular relationship. It doesn't talk of a triangular relationship, but it definitely indirectly talks of a chain holding. Because we said that if you've got an associate or a joint venture of a group company, so that was like a chain. So if you've got an associate or a joint venture of a group company, that also becomes a case of a relationship. So it was giving you a chain. Then the clause number 3 and the clause number 4, which we did, the focus was again on a triangular relationship. The focus again was on a triangle relationship with a clause number three on a joint control and other, but of course on a triangle relationship. Then I said from the examination perspective, you can forget about the clause five and then clause number six and the clause number seven, where the focus was on a person along with a triangular relationship. The focus was on a person along with a triangle relationship, where in terms of the clause number six, you were focusing on all the persons of 9A. And in terms of the clause number seven, you were focusing on only the clause number 9A1. But of course, we were looking at triangle relationships as well. And then I said you can forget about the clause number 8 as well from the examination perspective. So this was the formal learning which we did. And the part number 12 was on a clarification where we said that if you got a subsidiary of an associate, or if you've got a subsidiary of a joint venture, that's also a related party. So this is a kind of a mind map. This is a kind of a mind map which we created on a formal learning basis. Now, the moral of the story, if you want to quickly remember the aspects of this particular standard, is the informal learning which I gave you. I said you need to consider two kinds of important relationship. One is a triangular and one is a chain holding relationship. So this is the most important learning, that if you're looking at a triangular relationship, what you need to understand that on the left hand side and on the right hand side, you need to get a combination of strong plus strong, or you need to get a combination of strong and weak, or a combination of weak and strong. That's it. The moment you get a relationship on the left side and right hand side as weak and weak, it doesn't create a related party. The essence of the definition which is given in terms of para number 9. And in terms of the chain holding, I give you a total of 3 situations, that if it is followed by control and control, subsidy, then the chain holding says related. If you're looking at a control followed by significant influence or a joint control, it is again related. And if you're looking at a vice versa situation, a significant influence joint control followed by a control, it's again related. This is based on the para 9. This is also based on the para number 12. And this is based again in terms of the para number 9. So I think this is the main essence which you need to keep in mind, that if there is a triangular or if there is a chain holding kind of situations, in which cases do you say that we are related? And of course, after that, I gave you the input further in terms of para number 11, where I said that this gives you a negative list, that these are the parties which are not related. And one of the inputs given is again on a triangle relationship. Another input is given in terms of, you've got a trade union, providers of finance, government departments and agencies with which you have got normal transactions where they might be restricting you in certain ways, but that doesn't mean a relationship. A single customer, supplier, a franchisee, a distributor, an agent, or with whom you're transacting a huge volume of business, that doesn't mean an economic dependence would trigger a relationship. So the clarifications of what is not a related party in this case. I think so far so good. Now we're going to quickly make a run through on the exemptions given in the standard. Then I think we can do a little practice. So let me see if any questions coming so far in between. Right, friends, I guess I am pretty much clear. The standard is not a very complicated standard. So I think since we're going to be done, of course, with the standard today, I would request you to do a little consolidated revision, go through the illustrations in the study material, and then try the questions on test of knowledge. A couple of questions are given for understanding the concept. We've given you a good understanding. Of course, we'll do a little practice as well. But once you go through the concept and then do the illustrations and the test of knowledge in one go, trust me, you will get a good comfort zone on this time. Okay. Now let's take it further. And I am now going to the last section of discussion with you. And this is with regard to the government related entity. This is with regard to the government related entity. So let me first of all caution one thing at this particular stage. Well, in this particular case, if you look at the government related entity, it does not mean that the standard is saying that no disclosures are required. It is a case of relaxations. You're saying, yes, I understand there is a related party, but I'm not exempting you in terms of making any disclosures. I'm giving you certain relaxations. The normal disclosures which will be required under Ind AS 24. So there will be a bit of relaxations which will be given if there is a relationship under government related. Let's have a look. So we are given the inputs out here. A reporting entity is exempt from disclosure requirements of para number 18. So when I say disclosure requirements of para 18, it is a case of relaxation. It is a case of relaxation. I'm saying there are certain disclosures which are given in the standard. So I exempt you from giving those disclosures. So it is only a relaxation in terms of certain disclosure. In relation to the related party transactions and outstanding balances with a government that has a control or a joint control or a significant influence over the reporting entity. And then it says another entity that is related because the same government has a control or a joint control or significant influence over both the reporting entity and the entity. So it says there are basically, you can say two situations. One is you can say that there is a government and you're saying that there is a reporting entity. And let's take a case that there is a government and let's say there is two entity A and B. So we are saying that in this case, it says a government has got a control or a joint control or a significant influence over the reporting entity. So there is a control, there is a joint control, or there is a significant influence. Of course, government cannot be a KMP of the reporting entity. So they're defined only three relationships. So any transactions between the government and the reporting entity is going to get certain relaxations. And here it could be a case of a control or a joint control or a significant influence. And here also a joint control or a significant influence. Another entity that is related because the same government has got a control or a joint control or significant influence over the reporting and the other entity. So they may be related. So in this particular case, you can say the exemptions are available to A as well as B. Even if they've got any transactions with each other, you're going to give them exemptions. So basically, the involvement of a government in the presence of a relationship will give them certain relaxations from certain disclosure requirements. Okay, now let's do one thing, friends. Let's, I think, do some questions with you because I think I have another around 10-15 minutes before I think ma'am would join us today from the Board of Studies. So we just got 10-15 minutes. I think I'll take that liberty of doing some practice questions now with you. So let's come to the study material. So keep the principles, what we have discussed, and we will apply these principles to the questions in the study material. So we're just going to pick up questions at random, some typical kind of questions to elaborate the concept here. So after the entire discussions, the study material has given us some illustrations. So let's have a look at the illustrations with you. Let's have a look at the beautiful illustration number 1. So let's have a look at the illustration number 1 in the study mat. And this is page 11.20. We're looking at the page number 11.20 of the study material. And that is illustration number 1. So very carefully have a read on the language of the question, because this kind of standard requires your clear-cut things that you need to be very careful with the language. So read the language very carefully. So let's read. So I am given the inputs. It says entity P has a controlling interest. It has got a controlling interest in subsidiary SA and subsidiary SB and subsidiary SC. So they've got basically a total of 3 subsidiaries in this case. It says P has got a controlling interest in SA, SB, and SC. But SC is not a direct subsidiary of P, it is a subsidiary of SB. Chain holding. So you can see that in the diagram, but I think I'd just like to quickly make another alternative diagram so that you can see things as we read the illustration. So we can see on the top of the chain is P Limited, and it has got two subsidiaries, SA as well as SB. These are the subsidiary, and SC is a subsidiary of SB. That's what the input is given. It says that it has got three subsidiaries, but it says SC is a subsidiary of SB. So we can say there is a relationship of control, there is a relationship of control, and there is a relationship of control. So I don't think so. I need to make a mention that if you look at P as a control over SA and a control over SB, we can definitely see a triangular relationship. And you know that in terms of the para number 9B clause 1, which focuses on a group company, the fellow subsidiaries, we can say SASB is connected. And even otherwise, if I apply the concept of what I gave you in a triangular relationship, we can see on the left side and on the right hand side, there is a strong relationship. So SASB is connected. And I know in the chain concept, if you've got a subsidiary and a sub-subsidiary, then they're connected. So this is all a part of the group. Everybody is related to everybody at this stage. Let's go further. It says P also has a significant influence over an associate A1 and A2. So P has got some associate relationship as well. So let me do one thing. Let me put those associates here. So we've got A1 and A2. So this is a case of significant influence. This is a case of significant influence. Now let's watch it till here. You know, if you look at only this portion of the case, P is got a control out here, left hand side, and P is got a significant influence right hand side. You know what I am saying. So in this particular case, P is got a control on the left hand side and a significant influence, a weak relationship on the right hand side. So you know that they're related, which means SC and A1 gets related because of the triangular relationship left and right, which I gave you. Similarly, if you look at the case of P, there is SBA2, any combination for that matter, the triangles which are getting created in the relationship will make even SAA1, SAA2, and SBA1A2, everybody related to each other. So at this point of time, is everybody related to each other, including the subsidiary C is related to A1, A2? Yes. Let's go further. Then he says subsidiary SC has got a significant influence over A3. Now this subsidiary has got an associate that is A3. So this is supposed to be a case of significant influence. Oh, do you remember that we said in one of the cases in para number 9B2? I know I might be taking para numbers. You don't need to remember the para numbers. But if you remember the clause number 2, where I gave you that if there is an associate of a group company, SB is a group company, and there is an associate of a group company, then that is also supposed to be related. So I think we can now wonderfully see that in this particular case, it says examine the related party relationships of various entities. So let's have a look at from the point of view that if you're looking at the financial statements of P, or if you're looking at the financial statements of subsidiary ABC, or if you're looking at the financial statements of associate 1, 2, 3, then what are they going to call as related party? So let me take it further and we just run through the answer with you. So in this particular case, we are looking at different financial statements, and let's have a look at from the different financial statements perspective. Now, from this point of view, if you now see very clearly, we are given the input in separate financial statements of the company P, as well as subsidiary A and subsidiary B and subsidiary C. It says A1, A2, A3. They are all A1, A2, A3. They are all related parties. So if you're looking at the financial statements of P, it says in separate financial statements of P, SA, SB, SC, A1, A2, A3, everybody is related. So P in its financial statements will say all these people are related to me. So do you think that everybody else in their financial statements would also say that A is related to me? Reciprocal relationship. Then he says in the individual financial statements of the subsidiary A, or in the individual financial statements of subsidiary B, or in the individual financial statements of C. I'm collectively reading, and can you notice something very interesting? When it talks of the financial statements of P, it uses the word separate, and when it says subsidiary ABC, it uses the word individual very carefully. Reason? That when as a parent company, you've got a control over another company, Ind AS 27 would apply. And when you want to make your standalone financial statements, typically we call them as separate financial statements. A company which has got a control, or a company which has got, you can say, a significant influence or a joint control over another entity, it makes its separate financial statements by virtue of Ind AS 27. Therefore, for P Limited, it used the word separate financials, but it used the word individual for the other company. Because the subsidiary ABC do not have a control for, but technically speaking, if you ask me, yes, you would say subsidy B has got a control. So to my mind, yes, subsidy B would be applying Ind AS 27. Let's not get into all that. That you're going to learn in consolidation. So in the financial statements of subsidiary ABC, it says P is related, SB, SC is related, and associates A1, A2, A3 all are related. He is also saying everybody is related to me. And so would be the case in terms of SB and in terms of SC. Now comes the individual financial statements of associate A1. Then we are looking at, in the individual financial statements of A1, A2, and A3. They're going to say P, SA, SB, SC are related. A1 is not going to say that A2 is related to me. A1, A2 cannot be related for the reason, if you just look at the triangular relationship, it's going to be a weak relationship. So if you look at associate A1 and A2, so we can say P1 has got a significant influence over A1, weak. P1, P has got a significant influence over A2, which is again weak. Since it's a weak relationship, therefore we can say in that triangle, when the financial statements of A1, A2, A3 is going to be drafted, in those particular cases, they will only say that the parent is related, the subsidiary ABC is related, but associates are not related to them. And then finally, let's also have a look at the parent's consolidated financial statements as well. Now, in the consolidated financial statements, what will happen? The intercompany relationship between subsidiaries will get vanished. So in this particular case, you can say that since you consolidate, in those particular cases, you can say the transactions between parent and subsidiary will get eliminated by way of consolidation. So they are going to only indicate that A1, A2, A3 are related to the group company. So you can say from a standalone separate financial statements point of view, subsidiaries are related. But from the consolidation point of view, you can say subsidiaries are not related in this case. I think that was a good application of the concepts what we learned in this case. Okay, I think let's pick up another question with you. I won't do the easy questions because we've discussed the concept at length with you. Okay, maybe we can have a look at, let's say, the illustration number 3. This is also quite easy. I think this standard, of course, needs a little practice because once you know the concepts very well, I think the practice, as we say, makes a man perfect. So little practice would do. Just go through the concepts well and then go through the illustrations. Trust me, you will feel much confident. Okay, let's have a look at illustration number 4. Sorry, illustration number 3. It says Mr. X has an investment in A and B. It says he's got an investment in A and B. It doesn't say what kind of investment. The investment could result in a control or a joint control or significant influence, or maybe he's a KMP, but not KMP because KMP would not be investment. So there could be 3 kinds of investment, either a control or a joint control or a significant influence. Examine when can related party relationship be established from the perspective of A's financials, from the perspective of B's financials, and will A and B be related if X has got only significant influence over A and B? I think it is the same understanding which I've given you so far. If you look at Mr. X on the top of the pyramid, and if you look at A and B at the below chain, I think a triangle is coming in. So it says, when will the parties be related? You can say if it is a control or a joint control with a concept of a control or a joint control related. Strong, strong. If you say that even if it is a case of a weak relationship, signet influence, and a strong on the right hand side related. So what do you need to prove to the examiner? That there is either a control joint control strong, control joint control strong related. We say signet influence weak and control joint control strong related. Control joint control strong, signet influence that is weak still related. But if it is signet influence, weak, weak, then not related. And that's what it says. Will A and B be related party if it is only signet influence? If X has got a signet influence A, signet influence B, the triangle relationship results in what? A weak and a weak relationship, which I gave you. But don't write in the exam strong and weak. This is only to make your concepts easier. You don't need to make a mention to the examiner that, a weak relationship is present, a strong one is present. That is only, to give you a grasp over the concept. So just make a mention that this kind of a combination is not going to be considered by virtue of Ind AS 24, and a related party would not get established. Okay. So far, so good. I think we've covered all the concepts appropriately. Let me see if ma'am has, I think, just joined in, because she was supposed to join around 9:45. So let me just check it. Okay, so I think there is a few questions coming in between. Let me just first answer that. Coach, you said A1, A2 are not in the group, so A1, A2 can't be related to A3. That's right, absolutely. So I think that we've already defined. Okay, let me just see if ma'am is joining in. Otherwise, I'll take the things further. Uh, Ashok ji, is ma'am joining in? हाँ जी, मैम अगर आगे हैं तो अजीत जी से पूछ लीजिएगा एक बार. अच्छा, तो मैं अभी कंटिन्यू करूं या अभी? अच्छा, मैम ज्वाइन करें. ठीक है. Right, friends, I think ma'am is just joining in. Just give us a minute. Shilpa ma'am would be just joining in from the Board of Studies to you, and she'll be just coming live to you right away. Just give me a second. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, friends, do ask me. So my request, friends, first of all, is that, once you revise this particular standard, please go through the aspects what we have discussed, and then try your illustrations. If you get any kind of queries to your mind as well, please feel free to mail them to the query, to the email query which is shared to you for the final level. And of course, if there are any questions and all, I'll be happy to answer them as well. So in any case, do good practice. So there are a lot of questions which are given in the study material. Once you're done with those questions, you can trying the past examination questions and the other questions as well. Thank you, Koshki. Thank you so much for the wonderful classes. Thank you, Koshki. That's really nice of you. Thank you so much for that. So we're just waiting for ma'am to join in. I think she would be interacting with you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. You are still continuing, or shall I take 10 minutes?
No, ma'am. You can take over, ma'am.
Achha, okay. Okay. Good morning, students. Welcome for this session. And today I'm there only. I'll take only 5 minutes of yours. Since we are having short time, so what we have done this time is that for November 2023 examination, certain topics we have already recorded the lectures which we have uploaded on the portal. What you have to do is that we'll be scheduling some session at the end after say one, because this month we'll be running financial instrument and next month it will be consolidation. After that we'll be scheduling some sessions where you question answers and queries of yours to all the students who are viewing these lectures live or recorded one. They can just go through those recorded lectures and they can come in those sessions and put their doubts. And it is advised that if you have any doubts viewing those lectures, after viewing those lectures, if you have any doubt, you can just post us those your queries so that they can be well addressed at the time of live session. So this is what basically I wanted to communicate is that recorded lectures of certain topics, basically module 2 we have uploaded, and certain topics of even module 3 we have uploaded on the portal. Please go through that. We'll be scheduling these sessions for question answers and your queries. So well prepared for those sessions, because there won't be any live sessions for the conceptual clarity of those topics. Okay. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Right, friends. So I think I can maybe practice a little more questions with you. I think since we have some time further. And Koshki, you said, can you take some extra class on Sunday on Ind AS 115 further? Okay. Uh, thank you, Nidhi. Thank you. A great session today. Thank you so much for that. Well, as we know that the standards Ind AS are so pretty big in nature that there is no dearth of giving more inputs, and of course as a speaker I would also love to give a lot of inputs on that, but I think we always have that constraint of time as well. So we need to make the best out of all the possible resources available. And I think one thing which I would definitely like to mention, that self-study is definitely one of the most important things. I believe that yes, you are guided by mentors, and of course, but one of the things which we don't need to do is we need to put in our own best efforts as well. A little motivation coming from my side as well. So because you see, when you're preparing for yourself, there is no substitute in terms of your self-study portion as well. Because many times I see that our focus goes in terms of learning, listening to people and all, but what is important is that after that stage you must read additional material as well. You must go through the notes, make your own notes and mind maps as well. And in any case, I think if you've got some more questions on the standard on Ind AS 115, as ma'am just said, there will be a query session as well. So I think maybe those things can be taken up in those query sessions as well. The larger spirit of the standard, of course, gets done. So I think let me just take one last question with you before we end for the day, since we have a little more time. So let's pick up another question with you. So in the study material itself, let's pick up a question with you, and let's go to the test your knowledge kind of questions. Okay, so let's, I think, bring to the first question, though it's a pretty easy one indeed. I think most of the questions you're going to find easy after we have covered the things. So let's have a look at the question number 1, page 11.25 in the study guide. Okay, so let's have a last question for the day. So we are given in question 1, Mr. X is a domestic partner of Miss Y. Okay, that's interesting. Rather than saying that, Miss Y is an domestic partner to Mr. X, I think it wonderfully says that Mr. X is a DP of Miss Y, and Mr. X has got investment in A, but doesn't define what kind of investment. And Miss Y has got an investment in B, but it doesn't define what kind of investment. So there could be a lot of combinations coming in. So let's have a look. So you've got Mr. X on one hand, and you've got Miss Y on the other hand. So they are related by a domestic partner relationship. So we can say that they are close member of the family because there is a DP relationship between the two. Now, Mr. X has got investment in A, but doesn't define what investment, and Miss Y has got investment in B. Does it create a kind of a triangular relationship? I would say yes, because you need to consider Mr. X and Miss Y as one, because they're a close member of the family. So we would consider them as one. So we can say that in this case, there is a triangular relationship. So I think it all depends upon the left hand side and on the right hand side, what kind of relationship comes in. So if you got a strong, strong, related, if you got a weak, weak, not related, strong, weak, weak, strong, related. Let's have a look. Examine when can a related party relationship be established from the perspective of A. I think I already said if it is a strong and strong, or if it is a strong and weak, but it should not be a weak plus a weak relationship. So you can define the combination of the relationship, control, joint control on one hand, and again control, joint control on the other. Then there is control, joint control on one hand, and maybe a cigarette influence of KMP on the other, but not a case of cigarette influence and KMP on both sides. Examine when can a related party relationship be established from the point of view of B. Same, the answer would be same as one. You need to apply the same concept of the combinations in this case. And will A and B be related party if X has got only cigarette influence over A and Y also has got a cigarette influence over B? I think that makes it a combination of a weak and weak relationship. And I think we know that in this case, they are not going to be related party in this particular case. Okay. So I think that's good enough. You can do a little more extensive practice, friends, at this stage. Let's see if there are any questions coming further at your side. So in any case, tomorrow we'll be starting with another new standard with you and finishing up the standard. We'll be doing Ind AS 108, which is again a disclosure standard and a very interesting and very pertinent practical standard as well. So any question, friends, on your side? I think otherwise we're going to call it as a day. Okay, so far so good. So I guess then it's time to bid you goodbye, friends, on this. So thank you so much, friends. So we're going to join you tomorrow. Bye-bye and take care.